One by one, participants shared their stories. Some spoke of experiencing racism, while others talked about their journey toward self-awareness. Each story was powerful, and Sarah realized how much courage it took for these individuals to be vulnerable. When it was finally her turn, Sarah took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, but she stayed calm. "My name is Sarah," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I'm here because I realized I've been part of the problem. I was raised in an environment where certain attitudes were considered normal, and I never questioned them. I treated people differently because of their race without realizing how wrong it was. It wasn't until I met Ethan that I saw the impact my behavior had on others. I hurt people, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I'm here to learn, to listen, and to be part of something better." The room fell silent as Sarah finished. She felt exposed, but then a woman across from her, who had shared her own story of facing discrimination, smiled and nodded in understanding. "Thank you for sharing that, Sarah," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "It takes courage to acknowledge our mistakes, and even more courage to work toward change. We're glad to have you here." Sarah sat down, her heart still pounding, but she felt a sense of relief. She had taken the first step, admitted her mistakes, and committed to a new path. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The rest of the meeting focused on logistics. They discussed upcoming events and workshops, and Sarah was paired with a mentor, Elena, who had been involved with the program for years. Elena had a calm, reassuring presence, and Sarah felt grateful to have someone guide her through this new journey. After the meeting, as people began to leave, Ethan approached Sarah. "You did well today," he said sincerely. "It's not easy to admit the things we've done wrong, but that's the first step toward real growth." Sarah smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. "Thank you. I'm just glad to be part of this." "You're not alone in this journey," Ethan said, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We're all here to support each other, and the more you share, the more you'll see how connected we all are." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had spent much of her life building walls, hiding her insecurities and flaws. But in this room, surrounded by people who understood the struggle for change, those walls began to crumble. As Sarah walked home that evening, she felt lighter. The day had been challenging but also empowering. She had opened herself up in ways she never thought possible, taking real steps toward becoming the person she wanted to be. This was just the beginning. There would be more difficult conversations, moments of doubt and fear. But for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt hopeful. Over the following weeks, Sarah immersed herself in the mentorship program. Her days were filled with new experiences, attending workshops on racial bias, helping organize community events, and even speaking to young people about her journey. Each day tested her resolve, forcing her to confront parts of herself she had long ignored. Elena, her mentor, became an invaluable guide. She knew when Sarah was struggling and offered just the right encouragement. Elena had her own story of overcoming prejudice, and Sarah admired her resilience. One day, they were invited to speak at a local high school that had recently experienced a racially charged incident. The thought of speaking to teenagers made Sarah anxious, but Elena's calm presence reassured her. "Nervous?" Elena asked with a gentle smile. Sarah nodded. "What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just pretending?" "You can't control how they react," Elena replied, "but you can control how honest you are. Be real. That's what makes the difference." At the school, they were welcomed by administrators and students from the diversity club. The recent incident, a racial slur spray-painted on a locker, had left scars, and Sarah could feel the tension in the air. As they entered the auditorium, her heart raced. The students sat, some chatting, others staring at their phones. She felt their eyes on her, judging and questioning. Elena went first, sharing her story of growing up as an outsider in a community that treated her identity as a stereotype. Her words were powerful, and Sarah could see the students leaning in, listening. When it was Sarah's turn, she took a deep breath. The room felt both vast and intimate as every pair of eyes focused on her. She started slowly, recounting her story, how small biases had shaped her, how she had disrespected Ethan without realizing the harm she was causing, and the shame she had felt afterward. "I used to think I was a good person," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I thought that because I didn't say or do certain things, I wasn't part of the problem. But I was. I hurt people without even realizing it." She glanced at the students, some nodding, others deep in thought. "I'm not here to say I've figured it all out," she continued. "I'm still learning. But I've realized the most important thing we can do is listen. Really listen to the people around us, especially those whose experiences are different from our own. Because if we don't listen, we'll never understand." As she spoke, Sarah felt a weight lift. It was as though she was shedding the burden of her past. This wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real, about growth, and about helping others see the importance of empathy. Sarah stood in stunned silence as the room erupted in applause. She had expected skepticism, maybe even hostility, but instead she was met with acceptance. The students, many of whom had likely faced their own struggles with racism and prejudice, seemed to understand what she was trying to do. As the event ended, several students approached her and Elena, asking questions about the mentorship program or simply thanking them for sharing their stories. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the students' kindness, but for the opportunity to be part of something bigger than herself. As they left the school, Elena turned to Sarah with a proud smile. "You did great today," she said. "I could see how much it meant to them." Sarah smiled back, warmth filling her chest. "It meant a lot to me, too," she replied. "I'm starting to realize how powerful sharing your story can be, even when it's hard." "That's what this is all about," Elena said. "Helping others see that they're not alone and that change is possible." As the weeks passed, Sarah's involvement in the mentorship program deepened. Her understanding of systemic issues and the power of individual stories to inspire change grew with every interaction, whether with students or fellow mentors. She began to see herself not just as a participant, but as someone actively driving transformation. One afternoon, while preparing for a community event aimed at uniting different cultural groups, Sarah received a call from Ethan. His voice was warm, but she could hear the excitement. "Sarah, you won't believe it. I just got off the phone with a local newspaper. They want to feature the mentorship program and our stories." Sarah's heart raced at the thought. Media exposure could help spread awareness and inspire others to join the cause. "That's amazing, Ethan. What do they want to focus on?" "They're interested in how personal stories can change hearts and minds. They want to highlight how our experiences can motivate people to think differently about race and prejudice." Sarah felt both pride and nervousness. Sharing her story in a public forum felt daunting. What if people react negatively? What if they don't believe me? "Those fears are valid," Ethan replied, but think about the impact we could have. It's not about convincing everyone. It's about sparking a conversation. We can't change minds if we don't take that first step." His words resonated with her, and with renewed determination, Sarah agreed to the interview. They scheduled it for the following week, and Sarah spent the days leading up to it reflecting on her journey. On the day of the interview, Sarah arrived at the newspaper office with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The journalist, Mark, greeted her warmly. "Thanks for coming in today, Sarah. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing this was her chance to share her truth. As she sat across from Mark, she recounted her journey, from her initial ignorance to the transformative experiences she had in the mentorship program. She spoke openly about confronting her biases and how her encounter with Ethan had changed her life. Mark listened intently, occasionally asking questions that helped her explore her feelings further. The more Sarah spoke, the more empowered she felt. This wasn't just about her. It was about everyone affected by racism and the importance of acknowledging those experiences. As the interview wrapped up, Mark leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "Your story is incredibly powerful, Sarah. It has the potential to resonate with so many people. I'd like to feature both you and Ethan together. It will show how we, as a society, can grow through shared experiences." Sarah left the office feeling exhilarated. This was more than just an interview. It was an opportunity to amplify voices that had long been silenced. She immediately called Ethan to share the news. "They want to feature both of us. Can you believe it?" "That's fantastic," Ethan replied, his enthusiasm contagious. "Let's keep the momentum going. We have to encourage others to share their stories too." Sarah and Ethan prepared for their follow-up interview with the local newspaper, eager to craft a narrative that not only reflected their personal journeys, but also addressed the broader issues of racial equity and community involvement. They wanted to emphasize themes like empathy, understanding, and the importance of listening to one another's experiences. On the day of the joint interview, both arrived at the newspaper office feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Mark, the journalist, explained the direction. "I want this to be a conversation, an authentic exchange that shows your growth." As the interview unfolded, Sarah and Ethan found themselves in a natural flow, sharing anecdotes from their lives and bouncing off each other's thoughts. Ethan spoke of his childhood and the challenges of growing up in a racially charged environment, while Sarah reflected on how her upbringing had shielded her from certain realities.